Hello, everyone. Thank you. We had a little technical difficulties, but we recovered. This month is February, and even though a lot is going on this month, a lot going on in the world, I'm so excited to have this guest today, Pastor Shawn Quallo. How are you doing, Pastor Shawn?
I am well, Shalek. Thank you so much for having me. How are you?
I'm doing wonderful, wonderful.
Good.
We've been knowing each other for such a long time. She's been knowing me since I was a teenager, actually.
Yes.
And I, watch her grow in ministry and so many other things. So I can't wait to have these conversations. Sometimes I check out your midnight thing that you do on Facebook, and it's so powerful, so awesome.
Amen.
I love the fact that you're out there, really spreading the word like you always have done. Hello, everybody, for joining us. Thank you for joining us. This is February. This is the month of we celebrate not only our history as Black people, but we're also celebrating love this month. And so I am practicing vulnerability this month.
Amen. Amen. That's
So
good.
I
Like
am
that.
no makeup. This is
I
me,
like
no
that.
makeup.
I like that.
Yes.
Good.
Yes, I've been having these shows with no makeup, and it's been cool. I'm
You should
okay
have
with
told
it.
me. I would have joined you on that. You
Yes,
should
no,
have
but
told
you look
me.
good anyway.
You should have told me.
Yes. So I wanted to just get right to it. Now I know recently you opened up your own ministry. Can you talk about that? How was that? What really got you to really finally do your own ministry?
Yeah. So to kind of so it's not really my own ministry.
Mm-hmm.
So I am, attached or connected to Pastor Sheldon Evans, EFLM Evangelism Family Life Ministry. And
Yes.
so they need, they had their location open in Queens, and before the pandemic it was shut down, and then they had it one location in Brooklyn. And so while he know that there is a calling on my life to step out in ministry of my own, I've been waiting and say, God, when? Because I heard the prophetic word through the voice of God myself and through many others. And I said, okay, God, when? During the pandemic, he spoke. I said, when? So I've been waiting for when. And
Mm-hmm.
so, Pastor Sheldon asked me, well, can you help us and be an associate pastor and cover Queens? So that's what I'm doing. I am an associate
I
pastor
love it.
covering EFLM Queens, but it's not my own ministry as of yet. So that is coming soon, but it's not yet. Yes.
Okay, I know
Yes.
it's coming. Okay, maybe I'm
It's
being
coming.
prophetic there.
Yes,
Okay.
you are. It's coming.
Yes, I know it's coming. I love it.
Yeah.
I love what you're doing. You have such a heart for service and for people and for the ministry. And I know that didn't always come so easy, right? So talk about that. Like, what was your call to ministry like?
It is so it's such a long, wide conversation that we could have about that. But
Mm-hmm.
if I can just go back, and for many of those would watch, sometimes we don't know what it's like, right? The word he told Jeremiah, before I formed thee in the belly, I knew you, and I
Mm.
ordained you a prophet to the nation. So that call, as we have been chosen before time, and
Yes.
so we divert, we go our own way. We don't ask God, which way to go, what to do, who to connect with in life. And so our decisions can sometimes alter our destiny and where we're supposed to be aligned to. But God has an infinite way of realigning us through our mistakes, our trials, and all the things that we have done, right? And so to go, just to accelerate what your question, I didn't know what it looked like. I didn't know what it looked like. I just knew I went through some things, and over 20 something years, I got saved. And when I got saved, I had no idea I was chosen. I had no
Mm.
clue what I was chosen to do, what the
Yeah.
path I was now on a journey of becoming. I didn't know that. And so, in going through and trying to find myself, but falling in love with God. And so I would
Mm-hmm.
say the first thing is I fell in love with God.
Now, what does falling in love with God look like? Because I will say that, I can relate to that, right? Knowing I was chosen, not really knowing what my call was going to be, kind of, and then, at a point falling in love with God, but also being like, God, I don't know about you sometimes. You see me though, God, like, like, I don't know, so I think that, a lot of people feel like, one of the things they say about Christians is that we have this love relationship with God, and we fantasize about God, but we also sometimes have these moments where we like, God, I don't see you, I don't hear you, I don't know if you hear
Mm-hmm.
me.
Mm-hmm.
What does that look like?
So it's funny, right? Because I remember I was like the last in my generation to get saved, right? My mom, is such an awesome, dynamic woman of God.
Yes.
She has taught us God all of my life. I have rejected the teaching, I rejected all of that. And so I was the last one in the generation to get saved. And I remember, Charlotte, I went through a traumatic experience. I went through experience of not just losing my children's father or them losing him, but in the process of them losing him, it was not like it was a fairy tale. It was a love relationship between he and I. When he passed, it was very traumatic even before. So it was two traumas for me at that moment. It was the trauma of the really co-parenting. It was very traumatic for me. And then now he passed, and that was a whole new trauma for me. So it was trauma on top of trauma. And I went through the process of, after he was buried, and went through this process. And, many would say we were haunted or went through stuff with the person, but you can accredit that to a familiar spirit. And so the enemy would use what you have gone through and use the face of that individual to traumatize you and to
So
haunt
good.
you and to break you, right? And so
Woo.
that's what I
I
was
know
hit.
that too well.
Yes, I'm
That is
telling
a
you.
word.
And you think that it's that person, but no, it's a familiar
It's a
spirit.
familiar
It's a
spirit.
familiar spirit. And
Oh my
so that's
God.
what I dealt with. That's what I dealt with. And I thought I was going to lose my mind. You have watched movies and you see people in the movies, and all of a sudden they're going crazy, and people not seeing what they're
Yes.
seeing, and they're not experiencing what they're experiencing, but they get to the point where I just need this to end. And
Yes.
so in movies, of course, it ends traumatically because either someone commits suicide or they wind up in a mental institution. Understand that that was the plan of the enemy from the beginning,
Yes.
to either get you in one of those places, the mental institution or death. And so that's where I was. And I wound up running to the church. And that's where we met,
Yeah.
at All of Joy. At the time, I ran to the church, and my mom was inviting me to church, inviting me, and I wouldn't go. But because I was going through an experience that I thought I was going to lose my mind, I heard the
Mm.
voice of God say, listen, you got to come now. If you
Mm-hmm.
don't come now, I can't protect you. See, people confuse God being the creator of the world to Christ being our father, or God being our father. It's a difference. And people
Yes.
confuse the difference. And so he said to me, listen, you got to come now, because if you're not under my covenant, right? If you're not under my covenant, I cannot keep you. I cannot protect you. So I need you to come. And Charlotte, all I heard was God saying that. And before that, God was calling me. God was calling me about a year before he passed, and I ignored the calling. So when God's voice came and said, listen, you got to come. He said, I stand at the door and I knock. We have to invite him in for him to come. He's not going
Mm-hmm.
to protect us if we don't invite him in. So I had to invite him in, and by
Mm.
receiving his son. And so that's what I did. And when I did that, and I started to go to church, and I started, because it's not enough to just accept him, but now you have got to learn who you accept. It's like any relationship.
Yes.
You meet a man, somebody's watching, you meet a woman, and you're trying to court them. In order to court someone, you have to get to know them. And
Yes.
so I had to court God, and God court me. And so I had to get to
Mm.
know him. So it's not enough to say, I accept the Lord. You confess with your mouth, you believe in your heart. If you stop there, you're still in the same place, because you have to get
Yes.
to know the one that you accepted. And so in going to Bible study and learning the word of God, I really developed my own relationship with him, and started to pray and started to understand him. And I literally fell in love with God. And
Oh,
I
I
always
know what
tell
that feels
people,
like.
and even my son, because I know there's a call in my son's life. And I told my son recently, his birthday was this month, and I wrote in a card and I said, one day you're going to say, oh my God, what
Mm-hmm.
took me so long?
Yes.
Because I had,
But
because that's
it's
who I felt.
it's a place. It's a place.
It's a
And sometimes
place.
it's a
Oh,
place, and where
you
God will
cannot
meet you.
explain it to people. They have to experience it.
Yes. Yes.
They have to
Yes.
experience it. And
And
that's what
usually it's
falling
out
love.
of our trauma too.
It
I
is.
mean, I think about the times that I was the most in love with God is because I was, I look back at my trauma. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying? I look back at the
there
things
it
I
is.
came
And
through,
that's
and I'm
it.
and I'm
That's
like,
how the love
God,
grows. And that's how the love grows,
yes,
Men and women, we woo each other, we give flowers, we say pretty things, and that's how the love grows naturally. But the love grows with God is to see you overcome, to see you survive, to see you
yes,
make it through. You just fall in love with, you cannot explain it.
yes. It's
You could
like
just
falling in love with
introduce
it's like
people to
falling in
him.
love. You can't
You just
explain that
it's like
love.
it is. You
Yeah,
introduce people to him, but they have to form that bond, that relationship with him in order to really discover
so good.
what being in love.
So many people, they judge God, they judge Jesus, they judge God, and they're like, oh, he ain't there for me. And I say a relationship is reciprocal,
It
right?
is
So if I'm not
a
praying, I'm not
word.
reading my word, I'm not talking to God, I'm not really building a relationship. I'm just waiting for God to drop some magic
That's
bomb
it.
down,
Come on,
some
that's
magic
it.
potion. We think it's like a sci-fi novel, where
No,
he's supposed to fix all our problems and then we fall in love with him. It's
it's
not like that.
true. No, it's a
It's a
give and
reciprocal
take.
relationship.
He got to be able to trust you,
Yes.
to give you stuff. He already knows you. But you got to know you. What is my motive for wanting God? What is my reason for calling on him? Are we calling him because we love him, or because when you fall in love with God, Charlotte, it comes to the point where if he doesn't do what you ask him to do, you love him anyway.
That's right.
Yeah,
Because he know best.
because he knows better. And
That's
if he
right.
doesn't do it, it wasn't good for us.
That's
Wow.
right.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
I love that. I remember my godmother who passed, prophetess Apostle Michelle
Yes.
Johnson. She used to always say, Chalet, when you go through things, tell God thank you. And I didn't know what that meant because it was so hard for me to say thank you. What? I'm going through but I've
Right.
learned that because even when things don't work out the way that I think it should work out, or people leave or whatever goes on, I've learned to say thank you because I know God has something better for me. I'm like, I don't know
That's
why that
it.
happened. I don't know why I
We
felt
don't
like that,
know.
but
The
thank you.
word tell us, he said, I know the thoughts I have for you. Right.
Yes.
And also Jeremiah 29 plans to prosper you. So we
Yes.
don't know his thoughts. So we have to get to know his thoughts, and then we'll ask for the right things and reject the wrong things because we know his thoughts. So get to know God's thoughts towards you. That's what I would tell somebody. Get to
Oh,
know
that's so
God.
good. I want to just stick on there and talk about a little bit about epiphanies even during this pandemic that
Mhm.
brought you closer to God.
Yeah.
Like, a lot of people, we're seeing a lot of weird things during this time. Either people are falling away from God or realizing they have to come closer, right? Depending on
Yeah.
where they are
Yeah.
in their life. And so what were
Excuse
some
me.
of the lessons that you learned during this pandemic that either really brought you to this epiphany place in God?
Yeah. And so it's a journey because, throughout my 20 plus years of being saved and walking with God, you get to different crossroads,
Yes,
right?
yes, of course.
Intersections, right? You get to different intersections, you get to different chapters in your life. And so in the pandemic, I wound up having COVID-19 in 2020, and I had it in March. No, April of 2020, I had the COVID, and I had it really bad, not to the point where I needed to go to the hospital. As a matter of fact, even if I did, I didn't want to go to the
That's
hospital
right.
because so much was happening there. I wanted nothing to do with the hospital.
Right.
But Charlotte, I remember in the pandemic, I made a threshing floor in my bedroom while I was sick, couldn't walk, couldn't breathe, none of that. And I made an altar in
Yes.
my bedroom before God. I made an altar. And I understood who I was. And like you said earlier, sometimes when things are working out, you're like, God, you're not hearing me. What's going on with, you're not for me. And we do that. And so when I made that altar before God, I said, God, I don't know if I was delayed in ministry. I don't know if I was delayed in obeying him. I didn't know if I
Yes.
wasn't where I needed to be. And
Yes.
so in that moment of going through COVID-19 and having my altar, my threshing floor, I stayed on the floor for like 3 days. I did everything on the floor because I wasn't going to move until he responded. I wasn't going to move. And it wasn't a response that I've done this, I've done that, I've done this. It wasn't that. I was on the floor and I said, God, if I have not, if I have not done, if I have not obeyed, if I have not, I
Amen.
said, forgive me. And I said, if I've wronged anyone, forgive me. If they have wronged me, I let it go. And I said, God, now
Yes.
whatever you need me to do, my answer is yes at the next level. Wherever, I said, if I'm tired, if I'm exhausted, whatever it is, I said, wherever you send me, I will go. If you deliver me out of this,
Mm-hmm.
I'll do what you tell me to do.
What?
That's,
That's the real place. People don't know the power of
ooh,
building altars. So I'm in a ministry now. We both started at All the Joy Ministry, but
yes.
I'm in a ministry now, with Prophet Passion Java. And one thing that he's really taught is the importance of building altars. And I've seen it work in my life. Like when I tell you, it was even a point where I felt like I was grieving. Sometimes your past will come back to you, right? The devil knows how to bring these
Oh,
things
he
back to you.
does. Oh, he
Or,
does.
like you said, familiar spirits, they come after you. They don't stop. The devil's
No.
always on his assignment,
Yeah.
right? And so they don't stop. And I felt that, and I felt like grief come over me,
Mm.
like a spirit. And I'm always like usually a happy person, optimistic, but I felt like a strong weight on me. And I hadn't, when we feel like that, we tend to do what we do naturally, which is to retreat and lay down and get
Yes.
depressed and not move. And I've
Yes.
heard God so clearly say, get up,
Get up.
go in your prayer closet. You want something from me? I require something
Come
from
on.
you.
Come on.
And when I tell you, I did the same thing. I built an altar. I put my kids up there. I put every weight up there. And I was like, I'm building this altar. And I'm like, I
Come on.
require you,
Hey,
God,
Baba,
to
shut up.
work for
Come
me.
on.
You
Come
know
on.
what I'm
That's
saying?
it.
I
Come
call
on. I
back the
felt that.
prayers of my mother. I
I
call
felt
back
that.
the prayers of my father, my
Yes.
grandmother.
Yes.
Listen, okay. I did that for like 2 days. And when I tell you that God will come through, he
He does.
comes through.
He does.
So
And that makes you fall in love with him all over again.
yes,
Yes.
yes,
Mm-hmm.
yes. It's so important that we have those tools in our in our bag, in our
It's
spiritual
so
warfare
important.
bag. We
It's so
need tools.
we
You know
need
what I'm
those tools
saying?
because, like you said, Charlotte, listen, the enemy is not backing down.
Mm-mm.
It does, and people need to understand it. It doesn't matter what level you are in ministry. It doesn't matter what gift you're operating in. It doesn't matter what
That's
titles
right.
you have. None of that matter. The higher you go, what people need to understand that he's coming for you. He's coming for you
Amen.
because his job is to not let you get higher and higher and higher.
Mm-hmm.
So we cannot get comfortable, and people don't understand that sometimes we sit in a place, and I know you can relate to this. We talk about much is given, much is required. Sometimes I've sat back and looked on the outside at others and said, man, I wish I could just live. I wish I could just be. But there's
Yes.
an accountability.
Yes.
And we cannot, because in that living, you open the door to things in your life that will hinder you, delay you, or sabotage where you're going. So it's important to keep that altar there and to revisit you and to repent daily. It doesn't matter. I don't care who you are. Listen, because the higher you are, you better believe that you're the one that needs it more than the one in the bottom, because the one in the bottom is trying to get to the top. So at the
Yes.
top, if you want to call it a top, wherever you are, you got to be so connected to the vine. You got to be
Yes.
so
Yes.
connected because Satan is coming. He's coming for our purpose.
He sure
Yeah.
is.
Mm-hmm.
And he's relentless in it,
I wish we would be more relentless like him, or more than him.
Yes.
He's very relentless, but we have got to know who we are and the power that we possess. We have the power to destroy and to block and to stop him, but we're not using our authorities because more time we don't even know who we are. So that's,
True.
yeah, we don't know.
And I want to just to hone on it, on identity, because I think that's a lot of issue
Woo!
that a lot of us deal with as Christians,
Yes.
as people, period, right? And I think that's like a little hole, a pinhole that the devil uses to
It's a
get to
big one.
us.
It's a big one.
Yeah.
It's a big hole. It's not even just a pinhole. It started as a pinhole, but it has now become so huge. It's
Mm-hmm.
holes and doors. So it's bigger than a pinhole. It started that way, and I'm glad you talked about the identity, because that is so true. If we would really know who we are and to discover your identity, you got to go all the way back. Sometimes in order to really unfold you got to get rid of the debris. You got to go through those debris. You got to go through them ugly things. You got to go through them some things that you don't even want to face to
Girl.
discover. I'm telling you. And you know my book, I wrote the book Uprooting the Curse.
Yes.
And so that was the activation even of doing that book. Dealing with you're able to, you have to face some identity crisis. You have to face some things that you don't know. And it's funny because that is the next book actually I'm gonna start working on, is
Good.
dealing with identity, because it is such if we would really know who we are, we would not have identity crisis, and we're trying to find ourselves in other people, and we're trying to try to get people to accept us, and if they accept us then we are. No, it is, you don't even know who you are. If you need President, what is that, Biden, if you need
Yes.
President Biden to come and shake your hand and know your name, to validate you, you have not even known who you are. Because people who shake your hand, they shaking your hand because they said, I'm going to bring you down. They might be smiling, but they're saying, I'm going to stop you. So not
That's
because
right.
people know your name and you can walk in a room that they exist in, it doesn't mean that you know who you are or they know who you are. You are not identified by people. God, we're identified by who God has created us to be. And so we really are missing it in
We are
identifying.
missing it.
We're
Identity has
missing it.
become such a big deal. And really, to tell you the truth, I can even say for myself, there are times when our identity has been caught up in what the world identifies us, right? Because
Oh,
it's
big time.
pressures in the world and so many things going on that a lot of times we don't know. Yeah, sorry, I had a call came through. We don't know, even ourselves, we don't even see how identity plays a role.
Yes, yes. Let me just say this also, just to talk about
Wait,
identity.
let me just
Okay.
can you see me?
I can see you. Yes.
Can't hear you. Hold on one second,
Okay.
Pastor Sheila. Let me let's see. Okay. Yeah, it's just I think that it when somebody called in it
It
just
called. Okay.
yeah, okay, I can see me now. Can you hear
But
me?
yes, I can. Yes.
Okay, good. Let me just hold on. I'm gonna just and bring you back on. Okay, yes, perfect.
Good. Okay.
Yes.
Good.
Sometimes when people call in, I'm sorry, it messes up.
It's
Go ahead.
okay.
Please
It's okay.
continue.
Yeah, dealing, where was I think I was talking about identity. We're talking about
Yes.
identity. And so just to give you a quick little story how the enemy can quickly get us to not know who we are. When I wrote my book, I was at the phase, I finished writing, and of course it was so tiring. I was tired, and I closed the laptop, I put the book down, and I knew it was time to start editing and going back and just reading through and getting my beta readers and stuff together. And I'm telling you, I heard the enemy say, no one wants to read your book. No one, you don't, you're nothing. Nobody, you're not an author. And he began to feed me with stuff. And I had to realize, what the enemy tactics were.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
Charlotte, immediately I jumped up. I said, oh, no, you don't. And that's what we have to do when we know who we are. We have to shut it down immediately. We have to shut the voice down. We have to shut everything down. And the only way to discover your identity and to really seal what God said is to really move in the things God has said, or to accept. So even if my book was never a success, even if no one ever bought a copy of the books, the fact that I know what God says and who I am, I jumped up and I began
That's
to edit
right.
my book. So it doesn't matter. I have to tell them, listen, it doesn't matter who doesn't read the book. I'm going to finish what I start because I
That's
know
right.
what God said. So we have sometimes got to really give the enemy a black eye by just stepping out. It's not about validation for man, because sometimes God is doing something in us and we have got to finish what we start, discover whatever it is that we're doing, because the enemy will stop us and we'll never find out who we are if we never go forward.
So true. I love that. I love that. Even during this time, and more than ever before, it's so important that we know who we are. We're in a time where the suicide is prevalent.
Ooh,
People are facing anxiety, depression,
yes.
mental health is on an all-time, high
Oh,
alert.
yes.
From young kids, it was a
Young.
time back when we grew up. Young kids weren't concerned with things that was going on in the world. They weren't concerned with what
Mm-mm.
they wore and how their body looked.
Mm-mm.
But now, with social
Mm.
media and so many other outside
Yes.
influences, and it's been really, more than ever before, paid a special attention
Yes.
to what is going on in our world, right?
Yes.
And so, because I've been paying attention to what's going on in the world, I've been like, okay, God, what are you doing? You know what I'm saying? What do you want us to see over here? And I feel
Mhm.
like, even with the pandemic, I've said this, with the shutting down of the churches, was more of a way of God saying, I want you to tap into me.
Yes.
Right. I want you to tap into who I am. I don't want you to depend on your pastor to pray anymore, or your congregation, or the gatherings. I want you to know how to reach me for yourself.
That's it. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think that was one thing that I learned during this period. I want to talk about grief, because I know in the last couple of years you dealt with grief, from your own, Lord. You talked about the loss of your son's children, but you've also had some other losses that you've been privy to in your family that's affected you. What would you say right now to people who have suffered from grief, and how do you think God views grief?
Yeah, let me tell you, it's funny again, everything we go to, God will use it as a tool to better us so we can
Yes.
help better someone else. And so it's, I want to let someone know that's dealing with grief, it's not a punishment.
Hmm.
Your loss is not a punishment, right? Because when we came in the earth realm, we were promised to die,
Yes.
right? We're promised. It's a promise. So we already know off top that it's going to happen. The grief comes is because and is because a couple of things. Either one, we have gotten so close and connected to our loved ones,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
We have intimacy with them, no matter what level it is or what kind of intimacy, we do have that. And so when you spend years and time with someone, we know that we're all gonna leave, but when it does happen, it hits us.
Yes.
It hits us in a place that it would feel like we can't move, we can't breathe. And so, when I think about Jesus, when Mary and Martha lost their brother Lazarus, and it's so funny, Charlotte, let me tell you, funny but not funny. Funny
Right.
but not funny. The day, a couple weeks back, I preached in January, I preached the same sermon on Lazarus. I preached the sermon on Sunday. As soon as I got off the pulpit and ended the live and ended everything, and we were gathering, my phone rang. My phone rang and I almost didn't pick it up. And I heard the Holy Spirit say, pick it up, because I was trying to clean up. And I said, it
Yeah.
was my sister calling. And I said, I will call her back when I get in the car. But in that moment, you got to hear the Holy Spirit. He said, pick it up. I picked up the phone and it was my sister crying on the phone. She said, Anthony is dead, my nephew. And I was like, wait a minute, what? And I said to her, I'm going to call you right back.
Hmm.
I immediately went into warfare, and I was crying. I was trying to bring my nephew back.
Yes.
I called his girlfriend that was with him, his fiance at the time, and she was with him at the time. And I said, get on the phone, get the phone at his ears. And I began to do warfare. I've been telling her, blowing his nostrils, because I want to be able to do what God, he said, greater work shall we do.
That's
So
right.
I
That's right.
wanted to be able to do that. And so it didn't happen. It didn't come back. And so the grief began to hit. And, of course, I had to funeralize my nephew. And this is a nephew that I raised because he was right there with us. I was a teenager. My sister was a teenager when she had him. So we were all right there.
You
He was
always
a
them,
son.
right?
He was a son. So he was more than just like, oh, my nephew. He was a son to me. And so it was ironic that I preached that at that time. And in having to go to the funeral, and God gave me the grace. It wasn't anything in me. He gave me the grace to funeralize him. And when he gave me that grace, I began to look at myself. And you see, this is what the enemy does. And I begin to say to myself, am I disconnected? How was I able to do this funeral and do all this? And it's like a son. And God said, no, 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 you're not disconnected to your family. You're just more connected to me. He said, you're just more connected to me,
So
that
good.
you understood where he's at and what happened in the transition of it. And so God had me give me the heart now for the grieving, right? He gave me the heart now for the grieving. And on my show, right after that, the Holy Spirit said, listen, you need to deal with grief and trauma. And so my Friday night show, I wanted to have a segment on grief and trauma. And that night, someone was to come on because I wanted licensed people, but I didn't just want licensed person. I wanted someone who was licensed, but had the Holy Spirit also.
Yes, of course,
Because the
right.
church needs to understand that there's a balance. And you talked about, we need this like never before. And God is saying, because he's coming back soon, it is time that we start uncovering. We start pulling up the rugs. Let's deal with the things. Let's face the things and stop, because the pandemic came to open our eyes. Listen, we're not going to dance over stuff anymore. We're not going to pretend that we're not going through anymore. You're not more holy. You're not more anointed because you're not crying and grieving. You're not more. No, no, no. You are human and you had an experience with someone. And so God said, bring someone on. And that Friday night, Charlotte, the person said, I can't make it again. I said, okay, God, I got to do a different show. He said, no, 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 you're going to continue with the show. I said, how? I'm not licensed. I didn't go to school for this. I don't have no knowledge of this.
But
I
you
just
have the
have the knowledge
experience.
of the book and my experience and the Holy and the Bible. He said, no, no, no. So I started Googling. And I started Googling now therapists from the aspect of therapy and therapists and how they see grief and talk about grief. And so I had to just started to quickly document, but make sure that I cited on that show where I got the information. It's not coming from me. It's
Right.
coming from a licensed person that this is what they have out there. So
Yes,
I
yes.
use the biblical aspect of it and from the natural. And one of the things that they spoke about that we hide so many things. We don't want to, people say, oh, when you say something, it's not faith. It's not that it's not faith. It's not that it's not faith. But Charlotte, it's time out for, we're using the prophets. And you're letting prophets become soothsayers. You're allowing prophets to become palm readers, because you don't want to tell the prophet what you're dealing with, because you want the prophet to go to God and come back and say, no, no, no. You need to say what you're dealing, because the words are, how can two come together unless they agree, touching and agreeing? So I gotta come in agreement with you, what you're dealing with, so we can hit the target and hit the enemy. And in that hitting it, we can now prophesy to the situation. After we prayed about it, we can hear what the word of the Lord is saying. And so we've got to uncover these things. And so I begin to just give out what God said. And then it's so funny, that night, people came on the live that were licensed therapists. I said, look at God.
Wow.
People was on the live watching, and they were saying, prophet, and no credit of mine, the Holy Spirit. He's and the people who put that stuff out on Google, that you can read it and understand it. And they were like, no, prophetess, you are hitting it, because I kept apologizing, and I just kept making the disclaimer. This is coming from a spiritual aspect, and anything I give naturally, I Googled it, and this is the information and who the doctor is, the nurse, whoever I came from. One thing that they said that blessed me, and this person was also saved. When you're dealing with grief, you have got to be able to say the individual. I'm going to use my nephew's name. You have to be able to say, Anthony died, and I'm hurting. You've got to say that. Don't tell people, oh, your faith, they went to heaven and you got to get. No, no, no. They got to face it. Look
Yeah.
grief in the face and said, I see you. I'm dealing with you, but you're not going to consume me. I understand that this
That's
person had to
good.
go, whether it was premature death, whether it was timely death. The fact remaining, it was a death. You have got to face grief. You have got to say, I know this person left me. Now, how do I pick my pieces back up? How do I move on? Sometimes you have to do something in honor of that person
Yeah, yeah.
to keep so that you don't get lost in grief. And
Mm-hmm,
so, in
mm-hmm.
order to deal with trauma or grief, you must face it. Bottom line, you got to
So
face it.
good.
Look
So
at it in the
good.
face. Look at it.
You know, it's something that happens with people that have dealt with trauma and grief, right? And I've dealt with touches of grief, but really trauma,
Yes.
right? And I noticed that when I let it consume me, it consumes all of me. Like my face starts to look different, my body shape, my mood is different. It takes over. It's a spirit.
And now
It's a
you need
spirit.
deliverance. Now you
It
got to
takes
take
over
yourself through
everything.
deliverance. Exactly. It
Yeah.
does. It
and
does.
and it's almost like when I see people that actually come out of it, because some people don't come out of it. Some
Some
people
people
don't
do
recover
not.
from grief and
Some people
trauma.
do not.
Okay. And some people are like perpetual, they become the spirit becomes so strong that it takes root in them,
Yes.
right? And
Yes.
it becomes like a perpetual cycle. So even when they
Yes.
try to get out, they attract themselves to grief. They
Mm-hmm.
attract themselves to trauma. They can never get out of it. It's
And that's
perpetual.
where you see pity party people who like to have the
Yes.
pity parties, people who like to say what I'm going through and for people to rub them on the back. These are signs that the
Yes.
enemy is feeding them, and they're feeding it, and we're feeding them with it. We have got to learn how to help people without condoning the stuff or keeping them submerged in it.
Yes.
Because when they're submerged in grief, you sometimes don't know how to come out of it. And so, if like yourself, I've been through it, and that's how my mom was birthed. Motivated, outstanding mother brunch that I do. It was birthed out of grief. And I remember when my son went to prison, Charlotte. I remember when my son went to prison as a prophet, as a preacher, doing the work of the Lord. And here you go, got to drive your son to the courthouse
It's
so
okay.
to
Nope.
turn him in
Listen.
so he can go to prison. You talk about grief. I went into bed. I covered myself up. I
Mm,
cried. I did not want to face the world. I said,
mhm.
I don't want to preach again. How can I preach? How can I do all of this when my household is falling apart? And I said, God, I don't want to do this. And the Lord looked at me because guess what? I was now in a more mature state. God knows how to speak to you
Yes,
right where
yes,
you are.
yes,
He's a gentle God. He's a
yes, he
gentle
is.
God, and he knows how to speak to people right where they are. And we too have to learn how to be gentle with people,
Oh my
not because we
God.
have overcome grief. Not doesn't mean someone should overcome it when we overcame it or in the time. We cannot tell people when. We could just help guide them. And the Lord said to me that day, get up.
See,
He
I know
said,
that get up.
get what? He said, get up. He said, if you are in me, if you know me and have me, and you're dealing with this, what say? He didn't deal with the church, he deal with outside the church.
That's
He said,
right.
what about the people that don't know me?
Ooh,
What about them?
so good.
What about? So God is not just concerned about us. He's
No,
concerned about the
no.
unsaved, the backsliders. He's saying, listen,
Actually,
I have,
actually, Pastor, so I have to just jump in on that one because
yes,
that was so good. I want to say that actually, he's not so concerned about us because we're supposed to have the tools. And
come
if we
on,
know who we are, we
come
can
on,
activate those tools
come on.
and we have the power to overcome anything because we have the God in
We
us. See,
have
that's the
it.
when we have recognition of who God is in our life,
Ooh, come
right?
on.
So really, we are supposed to have the tools. So that way, He's supposed to be like we're supposed to be the conduits for the
The
people of the
conduit.
world.
There you go. There you go. Absolutely. And he told me to get up. And he said, listen, he said, you have been told, you have heard the prophetic word that there's a woman's ministry on your life. He said, now is the time. Get up
Yes,
and go and and minister to the woman, save the woman, let the women know. He said, tell the woman it's not your fault. Whatever you're going through, it's not your fault. The enemy meant to steal, kill, and to destroy you. And so you have got to get up and arise. And I had to get up and I had to gather myself, get myself together, and just begin to move in the things of God.
Yes. And you don't know how powerful it is that your trauma and your grief and what you actually overcome becomes your ministry.
It becomes it.
It becomes your ministry, and you think that, like, God, why? Because that was what God needed to put you through, so you could be the powerhouse that you are.
That's it. And if you think about it, most people, if you ask them their testimony or what they've been through, you'll see that what they're doing now and who they are now, it's a testament to where they came from, like you just said. So it's our purpose, our stuff, our pain. And it's funny because when I first started my mom's ministry, my first brunch I did was from pain to purpose. If I didn't go through the pain, I would have never discovered my purpose.
So true.
Yeah.
So true. And that's so good. I love that because I saw the mom's brunch and I was like, I gotta try to make it this year. I haven't been in New York in a while.
And it's on live. It's on Zoom. I'm staying with Zoom. I didn't last year for the pandemic. I did it virtual. And this year I'm gonna do it virtual.
Good.
And then next year go back live. But normally it's in person. And it's a free event because God told me also, when God told me to go save the gold, go heal the women, he said, how can you charge them to heal them? How can you charge them to heal them? And so I did this brunch and I would get donations of food.
That's a
and
wonderful
everything
thing.
was
I love
donation. Everything was donation and my sacrifice. And people came together. They believed in the vision when I was even like scared to tell people the vision, felt like it was crazy. And people even said to me, you got to charge because you need to pay for stuff. And I said, no, God didn't. There's some things that you're going to charge for. But when God said don't charge, you got to obey God in the you got to obey God to the T, because sometimes you're going to find that it's going to be you and God because people don't understand your purpose. And when they don't understand your purpose, they want you to do purpose according to how they see the purpose.
And you got to listen to God, because there are times when God will say, now I need you to pay for this, or I need you to charge because I want them investing in you, or I want you to invest in them. But there's also times where God has said, I've had some crazy things, guys, that I need you now to sow the seed. Okay. And so sometimes you have to know when it's your time.
When you got to know when it's time. Yes. So it's virtual also this year. So what I do, because it's called a brunch, I want to make sure I'm good on a brunch. So last year, what I did was I mailed all of the honorees that I chose. I mailed them their gift basket, and then I mailed them a brunch basket. So they had food for it to be a brunch. Just the selective honorees, I just emailed, they mailed them out. So everyone had a delivery the morning of the brunch. Their doorbell rang, and there was a brunch basket.
I love it. I love that.
Yes, because if we say it's a brunch, the honorees has to get a brunch. And then what I did while we were in the meeting, I would randomly do raffles and send somebody a $20 and say, you won $20, get lunch for yourself. Because it's a brunch. So people say, well, how do you have a brunch online? God, if you obey God, he will give you the creativity to get it done.
Oh, I love it. Oh, I love that, Pastor Shawn. That is wonderful.
Yes.
I also want to talk to you about the ministry of moms, because I think that's so important. Because I remember, look, somebody said they were a winner one year. That's wonderful. Dr. Drummond, how you doing? But it's so important, because I think that as moms, I've been a single mom. I know you were a single mom. I went through trauma with my ex-husband. I know you went through trauma with your ex, and I've often felt like this guilt about my motherhood, right? Lessons that I've learned, of course, but sometimes feeling like, God, sometimes I felt like I was being too much of a go-getter and I missed some things with my children. Or I was so focused on my trauma that I forgot that my children had trauma. And so now I'm coming back, repairing some of their trauma, because I was traumatized. You know what I'm saying?
Girl. Yes. This is so good. And again, it's parallel. And most people would understand. If I want to just tell somebody listening to this and watching this, that you're not alone. You and somebody else have something in common. The reason why we don't know that we have something in common is because we're not talking about it.
Yes. Yes.
We're keeping it our secret. It's not your secret. It's the devil's secret. And
Yes.
your victory is releasing it. And I'm telling you, Charlotte, mom, again, it was birthed that way. I went through domestic violence with the children's father. I went through my son going to prison. The reason why that happened, again, you hit the nail on the head. Same thing with me. I was busy. I found God. I fell in love with God. I was pursuing ministry. I was pursuing God. I was doing everything in God. I was going to my 9 to 5 job. I was doing everything. And two things in twofold in that, because we can blame people and systems around us, but we too have a choice. And
Yes.
so we must take some accountability
You
and
sure
some
do.
responsibility for the things that we go through. Don't just point the finger at everybody else and everything else. If you learn a valuable lesson, learn the lesson of choices and know how to make the right choice. And sometimes your right choice might not align with somebody else's choice for you, and they have to learn to live with that. And
So
you
true.
have to learn to live with that. And so that is my valuable lesson that I learned. But in saying that, Charlotte, when I was raising my son, because I went through the trauma with the father, every time I dealt with issues with my son, I saw the father. And I never knew that when I was disciplining my son, I was disciplining the father. Oh my God.
Yes.
I never knew that. I want to help
Yes.
somebody.
That's good. That's
When I was
good.
disciplining my son, I was disciplining the father. And so his punishment never fit the crime, because I was giving him more than he needed or was able to handle, because I was disciplining a grown man in a child's body, because all I saw was my pain of what I went through. The next part of that is I was so busy pursuing God and doing the things of God, and I felt, and we all think this, and we got to learn how to line up our life circumspect wise.
Yes.
You think that because you're doing good in the church, that is good for your life. Can I say that again? Can I say that again? Because you're doing good in the church, you think it's good for your life. And I'm telling you, I was growing in God. I'm telling you, I thank God for where I'm at now. I thank God for my mistakes and what I went through, because I'm better because of it. But I made some mistakes that did not better my children. It broke my children. It hurt my children. I was in church going to 3 services. I was doing all these things. I wasn't showing up. I was raising my children from the cell phone. I was calling them, asking, are you home? I was telling my son, get home. Where are you? Yada, yada, yada. And there were people in the church that would try to mentor my son. But of course, people have their own lives, and sometimes the mentoring didn't work for whatever reason. Whether they couldn't no longer do it, whether if it was too time consuming, or watch this, or our children didn't change fast enough. They didn't change fast enough. And so I had to learn from that, is that your assignment is your assignment. And you cannot, people can help you with their assignment, but when they pray with you, when they encourage you, that is their assignment concerning you and your assignment. But you have got to walk your assignment out. And so my son was getting involved with everything because I wasn't home. Point blank. I take full responsibility. I wasn't home because I felt like if I'm here doing all these things in the church, my son would be okay. But the devil was in my house.
Yes.
And I didn't
You in
recognize
church and the devil in your house. Girl, that's a word.
Okay. And so we got to walk in the spirit of discernment and said, okay, I can do this for this amount of hours, but I got to get home. I could do that for this day and I can't do it. Or maybe no, not today. Or maybe you said yes to something, but something now happened and you got to say, you know what? I can't. I got to be here. I got to be at home with my children. And so one of the things, let me just help somebody real quick. Because again, you could blame people. Charlotte, I had to sit my children down. When my son came home, and before he came home, and I was one of the person who talk about, I'll never go to a prison. I would always get on my son. You doing this? What are you doing? And I'm never gonna come visit you yet because I'm so righteous. I'm so sanctified. I'm so holy. And never,
Mm.
my son went to jail. Every chance I got, I was up at that prison. Drove
Yes.
2-3 hours to see about my son, to keep ministering to my son, because I recognize God said, listen, you can't let him go. He
That's
is
right.
your assignment.
That's right.
You cannot let go of yours. It doesn't matter who let him go. You cannot let, he's your
So good.
assignment.
So
He's
good.
your assignment. So I was going to that prison. I learned some valuable lessons. I learned that when I went there, I saw all these men, when you go in the visiting room, and I'm looking around the room, and God said, look, some of them don't belong here. They were misguided. And so we judge people, but God got to check us and
Yes.
humble us. And the way he humbled me was to take me to the prison and see these men in the prison and see my son in the prison and realize that, listen, bad things happen to
The
good
good
people.
people. Oh,
And I
that's
had to
so good.
learn from that. And so when my son came home, I had to sit my children down, daughter grown, she had her own stuff. And I thank God that she was not broken to that point, but she had a brokenness also based on my decisions. What I had to do, I had to sit my children down. I had to repent to my children.
Yes. Yes.
I had to apologize to my children for not seeing them, for not seeing their pain, for
Oh
not
my
seeing their
God.
hurt,
That's a
and for
word.
taking out my mistakes on them. And I had to ask them to forgive me. And the forgiveness didn't come easy. We had to go through some barriers. We had to go through some stuff. There were plenty of times that me and my son was bucking up, and all of a sudden it came out, and we had to cry through some things. And I had to say to him, listen, son, I love you. I love you. But the devil don't want you healed. I've repented. I've apologized. Can we become whole together? Can we let the past go and start anew? Can you recognize that I love you? Can you recognize that I was broken too? And
Yeah.
I always
Yeah.
say this, and I always say this, and if people see posts that I post with my children, the one thing I always have in my tagline, we grew up together. That is my tagline. We grew up together, because guess what? I was a young girl, a woman who didn't know how to love beyond brokenness. And I had to grow up with my children, and I made some mistake, and I inflicted some of my pain on them, holy and sanctified and all that. But I had to sit them down. We have to be humble enough to tell people, I'm sorry.
I love that because I've done that, and that's so real. Some parents don't feel like they have to apologize to their kids. I feel like that's hogwash. You have to apologize when you do something wrong, and you have to know that it's a constant cycle, right? Because just like when you've been hurt, it takes time to repair your children. It
That's
takes time to
right.
repair that breach too.
That's
And
right.
so I remember it like it was yesterday. I had been through so much trauma with my ex. I didn't even, sometimes you can be in so much pain that you don't even see pain on other people because you're trying to fix what's broken in you. And I
Right.
remember being at this place of brokenness, like just total brokenness, right? God restored me. Let me just say that, okay? But like total brokenness where I wasn't smiling, not laughing, like the devil had come in and shifted my whole atmosphere and removed joy where I couldn't even see it in front of my face if it was right there, okay? And I remember being at this place where I was just like, God, I don't know. I don't know if my life is meant to be. I don't even know what you're doing. I don't even know if I'm a good mother. And I remember laying there in a place of like paralysis, basically, right? From the pain. Because, it comes to a head after a while, right? And I was like, I don't know what this is. And then all of a sudden, my oldest daughter had a little breakdown. And God said, you got to snap out of it because she is the reason why you got to snap out of it. And so it was like an automatically thing when now I got into my mission of, wait a minute, my kids are my assignment. I can't leave them behind. And I didn't even realize until that point that my kids were hurting because all I could see was right here. Like, God, I'm hurting. I'm trying to move. And, us New Yorkers, right? Us strong women, independent. What we do is we're so good at moving past the pain of keep on walking, dressing apart. We
And
got
can
it
I say
all
this?
together.
And can I say this just to plug this right there, what you said? And the problem we have is because we move past it, we expect people to move past their stuff.
So true. So true. And so what it caused me to do at that moment was that when I saw that, oh, wait a minute, I'm just moving, but I ain't really moving nowhere. You know what I'm saying? We moving fast, but we ain't going nowhere. Because whenever you move and you ain't healing your trauma and you're not going back and fixing yourself, you can be moving fast, but you're going to a door of nowhere because you're going to come right into yourself.
Right, full circle, full circle.
Yes. And so I really had to stop what I was doing. I had to really, I had to stop. I had to ask my kids for forgiveness. I had to really pay attention to them. I had to really teach them how to pray and really just go back into the tools that was given to me. I wasn't even doing some of the things that my parents had done for me that really helped me in my life, you know? And so it does take a village. You have to know how to ask for help. You know, even to this day, when my kids, my mom, my dad, everybody, comes in and helps. And I'm sure when I get married, my husband will be that help, So I feel like, it is so important that us as strong women of color, because we're taught to hide our pain, right? Yeah. We're taught that we got to keep on moving on. You know how parents, don't worry, you a strong woman, you can do it. No, you don't need this. It's so important.
You have to face it.
That we face it, we deal with it, we see our flaws, and that we attend to what our assignments are meant to be, and we don't just overlook it and move past it.
No, because it's gonna come back. It's gonna revisit itself.
Yes,
it might revisit in another time, and it's so important that because we need to move forward, we don't need setbacks.
Yes, and look what God did for you. God put your son in a place so he could bring you back full circle to your kids, and he did the same thing to me. He put a situation that was totally embarrassing for me. Something I would say, oh, my kids would never need mental health. Like I would never put my kids on medication. I would never do certain things. And look, he had me in a situation now where I was forced to deal with this.
You forced to
God will do it.
God will do it. Yes, he does.
He will do it.
He will do it. Yes, he will. Yes, he will.
Yes.
And it's for his glory. It's
so
never
I just want to.
It's never. Go ahead.
No. Go ahead. Think that the thing. Hold on. I'm going to remove myself from the stream and come back.
Okay.
Okay. Yes.
Yes. Okay. We just, and even before we leave here, we just want people to know that God's intention is never to bring us to shame.
Never.
But it's to bring the devil to shame.
Yes.
And if we think about Job's life, everyone told Job, just curse God. His wife told him, curse God and died. His friend said, you must have done something. Mm-hmm. But God said, Job held on. And God got the glory. And I want to tell somebody, if we could just tell somebody today, both of us, our story is so parallel and similar. And if we're sitting here today,
amen.
Hold on. Don't give up. Don't give up. Hold on. Change is coming, but you've got to face it. And even though it hurt, you might need a box of tissue. Sometimes we just need to have a sisterhood, just sit down with the hand in tissue and let me talk. Let me cry.
Yes.
Don't pray me through anything. Just
no.
Right now. We could pray after I'm done. Let me empty out. Let me just empty out. But we don't have the time anymore to listen to somebody, to listen to each other. Mm-hmm. Somebody might just need us to
and we become so self-righteous that we think because we got a title that we above going through certain things.
We're not. No.
You better know that you can go through anything at any time, at any stage of your life.
Yes. And if you see people with a title and an anointing, the first thing you should know is that they went through something. Yes. So sometimes when you see people with a title and operating in ministry and they're acting like that, you need to know if they went or they were sent. Because anybody go on their own. What are you going with? But when you're sent by God, there's a level of humility because
so good.
You had to go through some things, but the grace of God. David was humble because David did so many bad things, even though he did some good. But he was humbled because he knew how to repent and understand the sovereignty of God. God is sovereign. And his grace is sufficient to all of us.
Yes,
and we can never take the credit for work. I could never say I'm standing here because of anything I've done. No.
Me either.
It was God has done.
All to God.
All of it. All of it.
Yes. It's the grace
Yes,
of God.
I'm
And so I
telling you.
love this program because I want to just encourage women. If you're looking, not just women, but single men, single fathers,
Yes,
this is not just for women, right? It's for
yes.
everybody, that you need that network of community that you
You
can just be
need it.
vulnerable with and open with and let it out and heal yourself. Um,
Especially our men, our black men, this
yes.
stigma that they're strong and they cannot cry and they, no, we
Yeah.
need to let our men be able to be men and know that they're still a man. Men
Yes.
hurt too. Men hurt too. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. I hate
absolutely.
the fact that whenever a man cry, they make memes out of it.
Yeah,
That
no.
let a man cry in peace and silence, and we say, "How can we help you? How
That's
can
it.
brothers get together and say, listen, how can I support you in this time, this
Exactly.
moment?" That's one thing I love
Absolutely.
about some of the shows. I think LeBron James, they got together, and then Kevin. I remember Kevin Hart did the series. He got together and was like, "Let's talk about this." And I think
Yes,
that's so important, that we have a
so important.
community where we can be vulnerable and we can let ourselves go and we could cry and we could be safe and protected, and people
Safe.
don't use it against us right later
Safe.
on.
Safe.
Right,
Absolutely.
we
That's
can
a
be
good one.
safe and our word can be
Mhm.
stated and we can be like, listen, we're going to support you. And I think that's the role of the church to me.
It is
That's the role of the church. It's a community within God. You
within,
know what I'm
yes.
saying? That
Yes.
we feel safe and supported. Not where you get to go and gossip and say, oh,
No.
guess what? Her son got
Yeah.
arrested. You
No.
know
Yeah.
what I'm saying? Or
Mm-mm.
where you get to see, oh,
Mm-mm.
which one is more anointed. No, right? It's a place where I
Mm-mm.
can come where I'm broken. And I know that
Mm-mm.
people are there that's going to make me feel like that I'm a child of
I'm
God,
a,
that
yeah,
God is there for me no matter what
exactly.
I go through, no matter what
Exactly.
season I'm in my life.
That's it.
Because if we
Absolutely.
know we are people of God, we know that seasons come and go. We know how it
It
goes.
come and go. That's it.
That's right.
I think it says in Psalms, it talk 23, talk about, though I walk through the valley of the
Yes.
shadow of death, I will fear no
Fear no
evil.
evil.
You're going through it. It didn't say you're gonna abide in the valley of the shadow of death. It didn't say
Mm-hmm.
you're gonna reside there and stay there. It said, though I go through. So we're going through some dark season, but we're coming out of those dark seasons. Trouble don't last
That's
always.
right.
It don't last always, and so we got to
Yes.
just hold on and move through it. Move, don't stop,
I love
don't
it.
stay
Yes.
in there, just move through it. Yeah,
Move through it. That is the
yeah,
word. I want to
yeah.
thank you so much for being on the program today.
Oh
I
my
want you to
gosh.
also tell us, where can we reach you, about your book too,
Yes.
that you wrote, and everything,
Amen. So
and your
my book
broadcast
is,
that you do
I
at
have,
midnight.
yes, so I'm here. My book is here, Uprooting the Curse and
Please hold
Walking
it
in
up so we can see it. Yes. Uprooting the curse.
Uprooting the
Wonderful.
Curse
Yes.
is here. And this book is two places persons can receive it. They can get it through me directly. If they want a signed copy, they can inbox me in my messenger and I would send them the link and I would sign it and mail it. If they say, I just want the book, they can go to Amazon and
Yes.
purchase the book, right? And so, again, they can reach me at Shawn Quallo on Facebook. They can also reach me at Shawn Quallo 4@gmail.com. If you want to inbox me for prayer requests or anything, you can reach me there. Also, Charlotte, just to let you know, you saw my flyer for
Yes.
my brunch that is coming up on May 7th.
I'm going to share it too.
Yes,
Yes.
persons will come in. It's free. It's no charge to come in the Zoom room. God is going to do it. But also, I have exciting news. I'm going to share it here for the first time. The flyer is coming. My first conference is coming up June 17th.
Oh,
Yes, Uprooting the Curse conference is coming. And this is not a women's conference, it's a conference, because
good.
men and women, we have stuff that we're attached to that
Yes.
needs to come out of our lives, that we can move in destiny and purpose. So just get ready, June 17th to 19th,
I'm so
Uprooting the
excited
Curse.
about that.
Yes, here in New York, live and in person, and
All
on Zoom if
right. I
two
got to put that
persons
on my
want.
calendar so I can try to make it. I'm going to look at my calendar. I
I'm
promise.
gonna working on the save the date flyer now, and then the initial flyer, but it's gonna be dynamic because it's time for us to become whole and understand who we are. We'll never, the things that block our identity is the stuff that needs to be uprooted. And
Yeah,
so we
so
gotta
good.
get the stuff out the way to begin to now find our identity. Yeah,
So good.
yeah.
So
So
good.
thank
Such
you
a
so much.
blessing.
Thank you so much. I'm
Thank you
so
so
humbled and
much.
I'm so grateful. I've watched your life and I've watched your mom prophesy. I've seen
Yes.
Apostle Wiley prophesied. Even when I first came to the ministry, I was new in Christ and I
Yes.
heard the prophetic words over your life, and I'm living. I could sit here and says that I'm a testament, that I can testify to
Yes.
where you've come from and where you are
Amen.
now. And I just want to say thank you. Thank you for having me on your platform. I am grateful and I'm so humbled to be
I'm
here with you.
grateful to you
Thank you.
too, Pastor
Continue to
Shawn.
soar in God. Continue to go, because there's so much more ahead of you. There's so
Thank
many
you.
doors that God is going to open. There's so much that you're going to do.
I
And
receive it.
if people are wow now, they need to get ready and they need to hold their seat, because what's about to come is going to blow their mind.
Oh, I
So
receive it.
continue to go in God. Continue to grow. Thank you once again.
Thank you
Thank you
so
so much.
much. Thank you so much.